So we're going to start the final phase with another snapshot of an OKRE-funded or supported project. This one is a depiction of loss and grief that premiered at the London Film Festival last year. The writer and director is George Jakes, and we're also going to be hearing from Alex Gray from the NSPCC. They're going to be talking to film critic Rihanna Dillon, but before they come up on stage, have a look at this glimpse of Black Dog.
Trying to keep out of trouble. There's a good kid in there trying to get out.
You right, Dad?
Be safe.
Right. Bro, you alright?
You're fine, you're fine.
You're right. Newcastle's basically near Scotland. I can take you halfway. Come on, Nathan. I owe you.
What are you doing? You need to calm down. A bit of fun. It's gonna be a waste of a journey otherwise.
Where are you going to in Scotland then?
I'm gonna visit my sister. Bro, did you see that?
What?
There's like a big tractor.
It's like the book I used to read as a little kid. Red Tractor. The little red tractor. Little red tractor, man. Yeah.
What brings you up here?
I'm going up to Scotland and he's
Just dropping something to my mum.
he's doing that.
Come on in, bro! Wait, it's freezing!
So this is England, yeah?
Yeah.
Mad.
Nathan, calm down. I didn't run away. No, I left before I went wanted. Everything in my life is out of control.
What if she don't even want me?
Of course she wants me. Just wanted to see someone cared.
You're not a bad person, Nathan.
Well, you don't know me, son.
I do.
You don't.
You've got a good heart.
Bloody hell. It's beautiful, isn't it?
So much, everybody. In order to kind of really find the authenticity of some of the actions of the characters and their experiences, who did you turn to in the research process, and what did you hope to get from them?
Yeah, I was 18 when I started writing Black Dog, and it's a coming-of-age story about love, grief, sexuality. And I think Jamie Flatters, who co-wrote it with me and also plays the lead, Nathan, in the film, we were both 18 and sort of both grew up in different areas of South West London. And I think for us, it was about telling a story that we knew and telling a story about what it was like being young and watching all of your friends go to university, watch everyone sort of leave as you're sort of left in this quite adult industry. So we sort of started there. And, you know, there's a lot of me in the film. There's a lot of Jamie in the film. So that was really useful, where we can sort of look at our own lives and our friends and the people around us and sort of go, well, how do we include that in the film? And then there's lots of bits that we didn't know as well. And I think that's what I always sort of say whenever I write, is the least you can do as a writer is research. And whether that's just going online and looking up stuff or speaking to experts and lived experience experts or professors. So I was sort of super lucky that I met the wonderful Alex when I was probably about 17. I directed a theatre show and raised some money for Childline. And we met, so pretty quickly I sort of turned to you and I was like, right, I'm writing this story about young people and about grief and about all these different themes, and we have themes of bulimia in the film and some suicidal thoughts and stuff like that. So I think we sort of started discussing that and about how I can really bring a lot of like truth into that and nuance and detail. And then that was one thing we did. And then we also spoke to a professor called Dr. Sarah Halligan, who sort of really guided me from more of an academic side, which was interesting too.
So in terms of that collaboration then, being brought on from the beginning almost, what did that look like? How did you work with George to create something that is so authentic?
Well, to start off with, it meant loads of coffees. So we're meeting for loads of coffees quite regularly.
Yeah.
Because of the story that lies behind Black Dog and the issues that are raised in it and linked to the issues that young people feel are quite complex. They're complex stories, they're complex situations. It was really important to meet regularly with George, provide him with snapshots, so from our Childline service, for example, which is anonymised case studies from children and young people, but also speaking about what we were hearing almost like that day on the lines in our counselling rooms, just to make sure that that we were keeping up to date with the issues that young people were speaking about and the different ways in which they were dealing with those issues, because that is ever-changing.
And in terms of some of those snapshots or case studies, in Black Dog, are there any kind of moments of specificity that you really got from talking to Alex that you really wanted to kind of paint a picture of in the film?
Yeah, there was so much. I think it's sort of, you know, really, I feel really like privileged to be able to do it, but I sort of ended up going into Childline and kind of watching the volunteers kind of responding to calls and stuff like that, and you're sort of left in a situation where you're hearing these young people firsthand kind of going through so much. And so I think probably like, you know, without thinking about it, lots of that probably ended up in the film, and the nuance and the detail and just the language and the way of handling situations. But I think particularly, like, you know, there's a moment in the film a bit later on where our lead, Sam, played by the wonderful Keenan Mum-Francis, is sort of he sort of reveals for the first time why he's going up north. And, you know, you sort of start to realise that it's not just to see his mum, in fact, that his mum's dead, and he's sort of like going in this story about grief and kind of discovery. And I think that's where most of the work kind of came in. And I think we talked about this a lot, that really Black Dog is a story about resilience. It's a story about kind of after grief and how resilient young people are. It's not just about two grieving boys in that moment, it's sort of the after effects.
You talked about this really interestingly the other day about the sort of separation between, you know, they are not children they're not just grieving children, they are so much more than that. Can you talk a bit about how important that is and how nuanced that is?
Yeah, it is vitally important. I think one of the things at Childline we're really clear to do is to see the whole young person. And I think this is something that George has done amazingly well in the film, is these are fully rounded characters. Just as the young people who come to Childline are fully rounded, it's about their whole world. They are not just grieving young people. They're not just young people who have been abused. They are young people who have hobbies. They are young people who have friendship issues alongside their other issues. And it's so important that, I think especially when the media begins to portray young people in these situations, that they do take that wider view of a young person.
Yeah.
And I think just to jump in as well, I think from a director point of view, I think certainly in the film that both boys have different traumas and sort of come from different backgrounds and sort of are united in this joint need of having to travel up north together. But we wanted to give them the skills. You know, you sort of realise in the film that Keenan, again, who plays Sam, sort of can sing really amazingly, and then he can backflip and he can do all these things, and you're sort of going, there's so many films and TV shows that sort of just show like young people who have gone through trauma who are sort of just don't have any skills and sort of are very like, you know, just sitting at home and depressed and stuff. And that is true for a lot of young people, but there's also a lot of young people who go through trauma and put a brave face on and can get on stage and perform and do all these amazing things.
And in terms of, because obviously you said that you were incredibly privileged to be able to go to Childline and volunteered and you kind of heard some of the stories firsthand. But obviously not everybody who's working on a film might have the time to be able to do that, or maybe even the inclination, although that's possibly a different issue. But in terms of other resources, what was really useful for you? What was something that you could kind of keep referring to that you got from either Alex or others?
I think truthfully, like you go on the NSPCC website or Childline's website and there's like a whole heap of resources. And I think, you know, they're accessible to everyone. And where I say, like, as a writer, like research is the minimum you can do. You can sort of Google stuff and just really start to understand different perspectives and different things that are happening. And I think even the very nature of trying to do that, or going to a restaurant and talking to your friends, or going for a coffee and stuff like that, and just hearing different lived experiences. I mean, everyone in this room will have a slightly different story about when they grew up. And I think just understanding that we're all sort of incredibly different, but there's a lot of similarities and there's a lot of differences, whether you come from London or you come from up north, or whatever your background is. I think it's just important to sort of get a flavour of everything when you're writing a character, but then when you're actually doing the writing, it's about being really specific. And it's about showing like these nuances and these little details. And that was the bit of like craft, I think, from taking the academic side of things and the sort of lived experience side, and then going, right, well, how can I put the nuance in and make sure the emotional beats are all there?
Yeah. And Alex, what sort of advice can you give if a writer wants to use a real-life case study, for example, without kind of being either insensitive or just kind of using it verbatim, you know, making sure that this isn't necessarily going to be completely recognisable for somebody watching themselves?
Yeah, I think first of all, just to say when we do have case studies or in my role at Childline, and when I hear firsthand the stories of children and young people, it is an amazing privilege to have that information in our hands. And I think as a writer, a director, having that information in your hands is an immense privilege. And that also comes with that responsibility to make sure that we are respecting that young person's experience, that we are dealing with it sensitively, we're not sensationalizing their story. So I think that's why making it real is extremely important. And I know that within the work that we did with George, it was around anonymised case studies. One of the things that we do is an amalgamation of different situations that young people might find themselves in, so that they're not going to be sitting in the cinema watching Black Dog and thinking, oh my God, that's my story.
Yeah.
Vitally important, because we know confidentiality is vitally important to children and young people.
Yes. Sorry, were you going to say that?
No, I was just going to say as well, I think, you know, it really was that situation as well when we were going in and I was in the call centres and sort of going, I think Childline doing a wonderful job at sort of teaching you that you have to treat every child the same. And, you know, it's really hard for certain volunteers at the beginning because you might connect with someone a bit more because it's similar to your story and stuff like that. And I think that was an amazing thing that you sort of taught me when I was quite young, was just going like, everyone has a story and you need to keep them, you know, you need to treat them with the respect they deserve.
We are touching upon this a lot, but the idea of authenticity in storytelling, in writing, what do we mean by that? You know, why is that so vital? Because, you know, people have been writing about experiences that are not their own for a very long time. And why do we actually need that lived experience when we're telling these stories?
I think it's, you know, it's not just a case of writing what you know. You know, it's not just like going, you know, I grew up in Tooting, and not just writing like a story about a young boy who grew up in Tooting. You know, it's not that, but it's sort of, I think it's about giving it the detail and the like background and the nuance and the subtlety that it deserves, and sort of doing all the work that requires. But then also for me, you know, I'm super aware, like, you know, that I'm a male and obviously I'm a white male and stuff, and it's sort of going in moments going, right, well, this is not my story to tell. And that's as important a thing as sort of knowing which stories you should tell, you know, and it's sort of, I think I'm totally aware of that, and always whenever I get sent a script, a lot of the time I'm like, I'm not the director for this, even though this is the most amazing story.
Oh, really? So you're really sort of open about saying no to something because you don't feel you're the right person to tell it?
I think so, yeah. For me, it's sort of like, it's not that I don't write female characters and stuff like that, but if it's a story about what it's like to be female, go get a female director.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That's really important. There's so many brilliant female directors and female voices, you know, but then in the same breath, it's a story about what it's like being young. I do know what that's like. And then I feel a bit more connected to the material. So I think for me, whenever I get sent a script, it's like, can I smell it? Can I feel it? And do I know the world? And if I don't know the world fully, do I have the people around me that can kind of teach me about the world? And I think that's what really gets me excited.
Yeah.
And I think also from my perspective, from NSPC's perspective, the reason that authenticity on screen is really important is because of how powerful it becomes. So we hear regularly on Childline, for example, young people who've been to the cinema and seen a story on TV, a storyline in a soap, for example, and that is the thing that's given them courage to speak out on the issue that they're experiencing. So the power that exists in authenticity is amazing.
And how would you encourage people who might think that a subject has been maybe tackled on screen already? How would you encourage them to approach it from a different perspective? Because things like grief and loss and trauma is so multifaceted. But I do feel like some people, maybe producers more, might think, well, that story's been done. We've seen that.
I think that's probably where it's looking at like the snapshots in a way and sort of going, right, this is, sure, you know, there's that whole thing of it. I don't know if it's like there's only ever 7 stories and whatever, and we've done them all, whatever it is. But, you know, I think it's looking at that and going, and I think what Black Dog, we were talking about it earlier, where I'm so proud of it, is going, well, this is a window into their life at this particular time.
Yeah.
It's not a story that sort of like has a really clear beginning and an end, and it's not at the end of the film they go off in the sunset and everyone's super happy. You know, you sort of see them on a path to kind of resolving what's kind of happened to them, but they're definitely not fixed at the end, and that was super important for me.
Yeah, and I think, if we've got time, and I think that is, there's a real richness in all our experiences. You know, we might have had, you and I may have had the same experience on paper. How we react to it will be completely different. Who we've got around us will be completely different. I think we hear it every day at Childline. There are a million stories going on at one time. So I think it's never been done.
No, I absolutely agree. I think that's the power of film and television, right? To keep opening our eyes to all of these different worlds. I just had a final question that I wanted to ask you. I've lost it. About working with each other sort of post-project, or at least kind of keeping a relationship going with charities after a project has ended.
Yeah, I mean, like Black Dog was sort of one of many that we started when we were working together more frequently. You know, I haven't seen Alex in a little while, so it was really nice to catch up this morning. But I think when I started my company when I was 16, I went in being like, I want to tell socially conscious subjects, and I sort of want to make them a talking point and sort of really tackle these things. And that's shifted a little bit as I've kind of got older and sort of realised, like, well, actually, I just want to tell stories that make you laugh and make you cry, and if it can do both, then how brilliant.
Yeah.
But we sort of still work really closely with charities. Obviously, I still see Alex a lot and love the work that they do at Childline. I think it's brilliant. I'm also working with Teenage Cancer Trust at the moment, you know, and working with young people who have had cancer, and I sort of feel so privileged to sort of be able to go in and sort of tell my story, and, you know, hopefully that, you know, inspires them to work in film and TV, or also go hear theirs too. And I think that's sort of where I'm so excited, is always about hearing firsthand from people who have lived the experiences that you're writing about.
Yeah. And Alex, finally, you know, from your perspective, what would you encourage writers and directors to do if they're perhaps a little bit intimidated about reaching out, or they're not quite sure how to make that first step to charities like you?
I think do it anyway, because charity, just do it, because I think charities, you know, this is mutually beneficial. I think being able to get out there in media, on the big screen, some of the issues that we want to be speaking about and we want to have visibility of, it is such a mutually beneficial thing from both sides. So just do it.
Just do it. That is the message for today. Thank you so much for joining us, Jack, Alex, George. Sorry, I just called you Jack. I knew I was going to say something wrong. Thank you, everybody.
Do you have a distributor for Black Dog?
Oh, we do, yeah. Black Dog goes to cinemas in summer, which is very exciting.
Brilliant.
So I feel very lucky.
Fantastic. Congratulations. Thank you so much. I mean, the trailer looked fabulous, so looking forward to see it in the cinemas.
And thank you to OKRE for supporting
The film
Black
critic
Dog.
says it's a great film, so fantastic. Thank you so much, all of you.